Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to another episode of WP Quickies, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 20 minutes or less. So in this Quickies today, I'm going to be talking about the new Gutenberg query block. So it's a query loop block. So this one was introduced in the new WordPress 5.8 version. So we're going to have a little bit of a look into that. So thank you very much for taking your time to join me today. And welcome to those who are overseas and to those who are locked down here in Australia and those who are watching on replay as well. If you're hanging around, then drop a note in the comments. Let us know who you are and where you're from. We've got Steph in. We've got Susan, Mr. Meowpuss as well, some of our regulars. The Maze, hello from sunny Chatswood. A very Gutenberg to you too. On top of it, IT services, and we've got Future Shop from Markville. We have Esperanto Australia. Hi from the Central Coast. Hi back to you guys. We have Alan Kessler as well from Annandale. Who else have we got? Paul says hi from Sydney, another lockdown Sydney. Seven Circle Design from Dallas in Texas. Thank you very much for joining in overseas. And we've got GL Photography as well. Speaker just blew out the room. It is a bit loud, the intro. I might need to dull that down a little bit for that. And Joey J from Singapore as well. So thank you very much, guys. If you are on YouTube, make sure you click on the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And ding that bell so you get notifications of my new videos. And then if you're on Facebook, just give me a big thumbs up. And I'm quite excited. I got, hi Gary from Melbourne. I got accepted to be the LinkedIn live stream video as well. So I can now stream live on LinkedIn. So I'll try and get that sorted out for the next few episodes. I'm quite excited to get that one done. If you're looking to ask something, just drop them down in the comments while I'm talking. I'll circle around to them when I can, or if not at the very end as well. So drop those in there. But let's get on to it today. Always saying it wasn't his intro. You listened to something very soft and turned it up. My intro is a little bit loud anyway, so I'll get that sorted. So let's jump into the talk. So this is called Gutenberg Query Block. It's actually been renamed to Query Loop at the moment, a Query Loop block. So Gutenberg changes all the time with every version. So it used to be called the Query Block. Now it's called the Query Loop block. So let's jump into this. I'll make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so let's wind it back a little bit and talk about what is a WordPress query, because we kind of need to understand how WordPress works and what a query means before we can understand how the loop block works now. So for very kind of basics, so WordPress a query is a call to retrieve information from the connected database. So when you ask WordPress to do something, it goes around the back end, it queries the database, and that's the query. So it's asking what's that information, and then it comes back to us from there. Now, a simple illustration of this would be the WordPress blog page. So a very basic WordPress site, you've got in your general settings, you can set a home page as your static page, and you can set another page to list out all your blog posts. And now the query that WordPress will do might be to get the latest 10 blog posts by publish date and then display them on the page. So that's the query, is to get the latest blog posts. Now queries, of course, can be a lot more complex in nature and not limited to just the built-in WordPress posts and pages either. You can have custom post types. That's the very, very basics of what a WordPress query does. It's querying information from the database and getting it back and doing something. Now, what is the WordPress loop? Now, the WordPress loop is often refers to the bit of PHP code that's in a theme template that queries and retrieves and then outputs, for example, blog post data to the screen on that blog post page. Let's take that same example. So I've got my icons down there. I wonder if I can get rid of that. No, I'll just leave it. Okay, so here's a little bit of code. So this you typically find this in a template that would display your single blog post archive for that. So a simple block of code, we've got some PHP, it's going through a loop. So it's while you've still got posts to retrieve, and then it's setting the post, which is the current post, and that grabs the information into the template, and then we're outputting the title and the excerpt. So that's a really, really simplistic bit of code that you would expect to see in a WordPress theme template to display something like the blog archive posts. Now, there's actually quite a lot going on here. Even for this little bit of code, there's quite a lot going in here. So let's zoom out and have a little bit of a look at the structure of what's going on. I might make this a little bit bigger just so you can see here. So this is what this little bit of code is doing. So breaking it down, we've got this main query, okay? Main query. So the main query is the URL that's running, and it's usually based on the code in a template. So for this instance, it's going to display the latest blog post. This is going to be the blog archive. So that's the kind of context that this query is running in. So query information is stored in a global variable called WP_query, and that's a global variable accessible to the PHP code and the template. Now in the yellow, we've got the while loop, and the while loop, that's the line that says while have posts. So if we go back, so it's this the second line, while have posts. So this line here, all the way down to the end while, this is the condition and while the condition that you have posts, while there's already posts there, that's the condition that's going to process. So it's going to means that if there's still more posts to process, it's going to run the code in between the while and the end while there. And that code is the post globals. Now, what this is doing is this is basically set using the post. So if we jump back, so inside the while, we've got the underscore post. What that is doing is that is setting two things. It's advancing the post counter by 1. Because the template only deals with the queries only deal one at a time in this loop. So it advances the post counter by 1, and it gets the next post, or it returns nothing if there's no more posts. And then the second thing that does is it sets up the variables to get data content out of the post. So while we're looping around in here, so the very first one, it gets one post, and then the post sets up all the variables that we can then use in the next one, which is the title and the excerpt, which is the very bottom bit. So this is the template tags. And this is where functions like the title and the content output the post content to the theme for it to be displayed by the screen. Now, there's actually quite a lot going on even for a basic query. And of course, real templates have a lot much more complicated loops and statements than that. But traditionally, this is what you'd have to do in a WordPress page template, a theme template, to display posts on that page. Now, this example I just ran through was just to illustrate how complex the actual process, the actual query in the back end is just to get some posts out. And that's a lot of stuff to consider and PHP code to write, and it usually requires the engagement of a developer because we're talking about template themes here. So let's jump into the query loop block. So WordPress 5.8, which was just launched, 2-3 weeks ago, it includes the new query loop block, and there's an example of that in the screen here. Now, it does the same thing as we've described, but visually. Okay, simply and visually. Now, if you've used page builders like Elementor or Beaver Builder, then you're probably already familiar with how these types of blocks work. But this is new to the WordPress core editor. Now, you can find the query loop. So if you're editing a post, you go up to the blocks, and it's in the theme section. It's the very first block, or it is just now, very first block in the theme section underneath blocks. And I've got it highlighted there in a red rectangle, the query loop. As I said, it used to be called query, but now it's called query loop. These things change in Gutenberg all the time. Every release, some things seem to change all the time, but that's what it is. So if you want to play around with that, that's where to find it. And it kind of looks like this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So once you've added it onto your page, you're going to see this initial box here, and it's basically asking you to select a variation or a style that it's going to output the data from. So the four styles or four variations at the moment are title and date, title and excerpt, title, date and excerpt, and image, date and title. So image being the featured image for that. So we have our main query here. So we've got to select a variation, a style, first of all. But if we look over to the right-hand side, as normal with Gutenberg Editor, we can edit our query stuff, our actual block elements, our block settings. At the moment, it's asking you to display or choose a particular variation. So in this example here, what I've done is I have selected, which one is this? This is the title, date, and excerpt variation. So this is just as an example. So we can see here what it's done by not doing, I've not changed any settings, I've not changed, made any changes to the query loop block at all. But this is what it's going to look like. So it does a preview within your post. So it's going to grab out some test posts, depending on the settings, the default settings. And you can see here that I've got test post 2, which is the title, and then it's got the date, and then it's got a little excerpt at the bottom, and then it's got an add read more link. And then again, the second post is the hello world, which is the default one when you install WordPress. So this is the title, date, and excerpt variation with no changes at all to the block settings at all. And I'll try and run through a little bit of a demo if I've got some time left over. We're only 11 minutes, so we should be all right for that. So a little bit full screen on the right-hand side. You can see that there's some more information now. So now that we've chosen the variation or style, you can start to see some of the Gutenberg settings coming in. And so we've got color, we've got settings, and there's lots more. And I'm going to run through those just a little bit quickly in the next few slides. And GL Photography and Art is saying, I'm sure you're going to cover it, but this would mean we don't need to exit the loop unless we are coding it then. That's correct. So this whole block, so this query loop block is basically to replace the theme template that's going to display all the blog post archives, and a lot more as well. You can do a lot more with this query loop. So let's have a look at some of the other settings. I'll make this a little bit big, get rid of me. There we go. So here are the query loop block settings. So the first one, I've got color. And the color controls are pretty basic at the moment. They only really allow you to change the text color and the block background color. Now, it'd be really nice if you could control some other HTML elements inside the block, like links and hovers, etc. But such is the limitation of the Gutenberg editor at the moment. So very basic color control. You can obviously control more colors using the CSS. But at the moment the controls are very basic for color, and I've put the advanced one here. Now all these settings are stacked on the right hand side vertically, but I've just put them side by side here just so you can actually see them a little bit better on the screen. So the advanced one, this is the one at the very bottom of the query loop block settings, and it's pretty basic standard. A Gutenberg advanced block only really allows you to change the container element from a div or whatever you want, and to add additional CSS classes so you can target all the stuff inside that. But here are the other settings. Now this one here is called the settings, and in this one, this is where you can actually change the actual settings of how the query block works. So I've split this block into two just so it fits nicely on the screen, but it's really one vertical accordion here. So from here, you can build up your query, selecting the post type and other arguments to determine what results come back. So you can see on the right hand side there, it's got post type post. So if you've got more post types, you can certainly choose whatever it is. So if you've got WooCommerce installed, for example, you'll have access to the product post type. So you can bring back products in however way you want. So you can really build up your own query, or at the very top, there's an inherent template. Now what that means is if you're modifying a search results template, then you could inherit that query from the template. So your query would basically be the set of posts returned by the search if this toggle inherit query from template was set on. And another example, if you're editing a category archive, then the default query would inherit those posts returned in the category you selected. Otherwise, if you keep that setting off, then you just build up your own query. So this is off just now, so it's not inheriting any information. All it's doing is bringing in the post type, and then we've got a few settings on the down below that says order by, and that's your general stuff. So newest to oldest, oldest to newest, by date and by title and stuff like that. And you have an option to include your sticky posts or not. So that's all the stuff that's in the settings for there, but we do have an additional box right underneath, and that is called filters. And this is where you can get a little bit more filtering the actual posts that are coming back. So you can set the categories you want the post to come back on. You can set the tags that you want this particular post to come on, and you can select which author, and you can actually add keywords as well just within those posts. So you are actually able to build up a fairly sophisticated loop and query and loop to get the stuff back without having to do any PHP code at all. Now, I know this might seem a little bit limited, especially compared with the widgets that you get with Elementor and Beaver Builder, but bear in mind that this is just the start of the journey of Gutenberg at the moment. So what these are for is something called full site editing, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I want to do a little bit of a demo. We've got enough time. We're only 15 minutes in, so bear with me. I hope this works. Let me remove this, and then I will go into the other one. Let's see if I can choose the other one. Where is it? Get this out full screen. This one, and I'll put this on screen. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. I'll make this full screen and actually, there we go. That should be a little bit, might be a little bit small, but hopefully just a demonstration. So here I'm editing just a basic post. So this is a demo website. So I've got a post here, and here's where you go and add your new blocks up at the top here. And we go down to scroll down, design, widgets, down to theme, and here we have a query loop in here. So I'm going to click on that, and we can see that it's added a blank query loop. It's taking a little bit of time. Let's just let that go round and round and round. I'll get rid of this bit here. Okay, so what it's doing just now, it's just loading the defaults. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. It's on a test server. There we go. So what this has done is actually choosing a filter for me, but really, I don't know why it's done that. You should probably start with that. So start with a blank one. It might be because I was playing around with it earlier on. So this is what it would look like at the beginning. So you've got your query loop, and it says select a variation to start with. So title and date, title and excerpt, date, title and excerpt, or featured image as well. So let's just do the same one as I had. So title, date, and excerpt. Okay, so what it's done is I've only got 2 posts in this test system, so it's drawn them out from here. So we've got our kind of usual block controls here. We can change alignment, we can display the settings as well. So here we can choose the number of items per page. So there's only 2 posts in this database, but if I wanted 10 to come back, I could choose 10. If I wanted 10 to come back starting, at number 20, I could do the offset and the maximum number of pages to show. So you've got a little bit of filtering up here as well. We can choose list view, or you can choose category view. So you can have like boxes, like a grid view or a list view as well. And then over on this side is where you have your block settings. So at the moment, there's the colors are just very, very basic colors that you can have. It just changes all the links in there. Not particularly useful. And the background color if you want like something gray or pink or whatever. So that's the color. And then settings down here. Post types, so you can see I've got WooCommerce installed in this, it's a demo website. So we can see I've got the product. So if I clicked on product, give it a little bit of time. Here's my one product. My test product is called Top Banana, which is great. So I've actually got a picture with that. Let's see if I can reset this. How do we reset this? Probably not very well. This is one of the problems with Gutenberg, is that it's very difficult to display everything. So there we go. Just using the list view there to select the element. See if I can reset this. Can I reset it? No. Okay. Okay, let's stop playing around with that. Let's get back into here. Oops, it's on the product post template. Okay, there we go. And in the block. So here's some of the block features that we're getting. Here's the block. So individually, you can change the typography. So this is like once you actually get the stuff through, the post through. So this is one that's the products. So now we're starting to we can actually change the typography of the H1 or the H2, or we can set a custom size. We do have control over the separate elements. So see how it's bringing it in. So we've got our query loop here, which is the top loop here, and these are our settings. So we'll set it to product type. And newest to oldest, for example, so we can do that. These ones here in the block. Or once we actually go into it, we can actually edit the CSS or some properties from the product that's coming back as well. So we can change the typography size, the custom, we can do the format of dates and things like that. So you got a little bit of control over the elements. And if we click on the list view here, we can see what that's done. So here's our query loop at the top in here. And within that, it's brought in, and this is the template that we chose. We chose that title, excerpt, and date. So here they are, they're bringing in, so as separate blocks. So this is like a group block. And then you've got individual settings that you can choose between all of those as well for those. So yeah, so it's pretty good if you're on this kind of journey to having no PHP, no coding required. So again, we've got our settings, and then we've got our filters under that. So if we just want author, and then we could put keywords in there, and advanced is just your default container element and CSS. So that's a quick example of the query block, the query loop block. I'll see if I'll switch back to the presentation. There we go. I'll make this full screen. Okay. Get rid of that. Boom. Okay, guys, so that was a quick demo of that query loop. But what I want to talk about is what this actually means. Okay, so what does this query loop block mean in the grand scheme of things for WordPress? Now, previous to WordPress 5.8, the blocks have been purely design focused. So elements like titles, images, videos, things like that. So very, very design oriented. The query loop block, however, is the first attempt at being able to edit the structural theme elements of a WordPress website. So you may have heard the phrase full site editing kind of bandied around some forums or some blog posts regarding WordPress in the future. But the goal is to provide ways in the WordPress core app to be able to modify everything that traditionally a PHP developed theme would provide. So we're talking about navigation, header, footer, sidebar, widget areas, everything. Now, if you've been using page builders, then obviously that's something that's not new to you, but it is new for the WordPress core. And nobody really knows at the moment what the end result for WordPress full site editing, or FSE, is going to be like, as there aren't really any solid plans or concepts at the moment. It's very much fly by the seat of your pants. At the moment, coding, the development of WordPress over the past few years has mostly been like the early days of Facebook, move fast and break things. So there isn't really a core roadmap that I can see. There isn't really an end goal per se that's like a designed, mocked up version. It's very much just bang some code out, see what it's like. Do people like it? Well, do the developers like it? And they just modify it and tweak it. And that's why on every release of WordPress, we're seeing little changes to the editor, which is not good for consistency, but I guess, it's good for getting to the end point. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think of the WordPress full site editing? What would you like it to evolve into? What do you think about the concept? So that's my question to you guys. We've got a few minutes, so if you want to pop down your answers in the comments, that would be great. I've got a couple of things here that I'll just cover in the meantime. So Gary asks, does the set of fields, attributes, or properties available vary by post type? They do not at the moment. So they are the same. So for the query loop block, it's the same things you're getting. So you're only allowed to really change by post type. You can change the order of them, and you can do filter on categories and tags and keywords as well. And they don't change when you select whatever post you select. However, you do have the settings that come in. So because this is a group block, if you're bringing the title and date, then you've got different options for changing the title. And if you click on the date, you've obviously got different date options. But as a whole, the settings don't change all that much when you're selecting on them. And bear in mind, this is like the first version of this query loop block. It's the very first version that I've been working on. So this is going to change quite a lot, I reckon, over the next few WordPress releases. Geophotography Art asks, full site editing, so many people can make ugly sites. Well, people have got access to page builders already, so there are quite a few ugly sites out there at the moment. But yeah, so it's WordPress's way of bringing like the page builder experience, I guess, into the WordPress core app. Full site editing, great in concept, but clients could mess up a website very quickly. And yes, I do agree with that. I do agree. And, we're seeing this whole editor evolve. So you could see additional plugins that allow you to lock down blocks or block sets or block patterns at the moment that would maybe help to stop that from happening. But that's definitely so with page builders. There's a lot of clients find it really easy to just kind of build pages, so they kind of mess up designs very well. So I just grabbed some tea. Mr. Miapus, I'd like to replace page builders such as Elementor and have the same function with maybe a bit more. So he's read that even something great like Elementor can affect TTFB, that's time to first byte, more than block editors. Yep, that is true. So if you've got something like Elementor or Beaver Builder or Divi or anything, then that's obviously sitting on top of your WordPress core app block. And more plugins means more resources, more JavaScript files, and more stuff to load in. And that's going to affect your bottom line, which is your time to first byte. And that's the time that your web server responds to the requests from the browser to give it information. So having less stuff, less plugins loaded in is going to mean faster. So if you install WordPress just out of the box and you're not running anything on top of it, it's going to be the fastest it can be unless you move to a super fast host. Once you start adding stuff onto it, plugins and themes, and that's going to slow it down. That's just the nature of what happens. So yes, so big plugins like Elementor and Beaver Builder and Divi, they've got a lot of stuff in there, which is a lot of options. So it means a lot of files and stuff to load in on top of that, which is going to affect it. So yes, in some ways, then being able to replace functions from page builders straight into the WordPress core app is advantageous. So yeah, that's a good point. GL Photography and Art says, what I would like as a developer is to be able to limit options so clients have more limited access to certain options. Yep, that's completely true. And prior to Gutenberg, a lot of the emphasis on WordPress was in the kind of the big media agencies. So they've embraced WordPress quite rapidly in Australia, and they've engaged in the services from quite a few of the top agencies to build custom editing experiences, because they have obviously different layers of editors going in, different layers of users going into the WordPress website. So they've been able to build different styles or different editing experiences that those people would enter into. And something similar is probably what you're getting on to with the Gutenberg editing. So be able to have like different experiences, limit blocks to certain user roles, and allow other people just very kind of limited access. So I'm sure we're going to see that whole environment kind of expand and grow into once Gutenberg is kind of really kind of getting more towards this full site editing experience. Gene says he's used the Divi theme builder in the past 2 years, and it makes theme customization so much easier. And he looks forward to having full site editing in core. Yep, that would be good. And Paul says, amen to Mr. Meowpoos to get rid of page builders. Yeah, so that's great. So it looks like that you guys are pretty on board for the full site editing experience, whatever that's going to look like. I personally, as a developer, are keen to see it evolve, but not maybe in the direction it's going at the moment. I'd like to see more of the core team take comments and feedback back from the developer community and build that in. At the moment, as a developer, it very much seems like it's railroaded into the direction that they wanted to go, rather than what the community thinks is a little bit better. And one example of that was the blockifying the customizer. So this is a new version of WordPress 5.8. You can actually edit the customizer. So within the customizer, you can go into your sidebar and your widgets are all blockified. But if you try using that as a user interface, it's an absolute nightmare. They've got these panels that are coming out everywhere. It just doesn't really make very much sense. So hopefully they'll get their stuff together eventually, and hopefully they'll listen to feedback that's coming back from the community. But I think full site editing is going to go ahead regardless of whether we like it or not. So we just hope that they'll take on board some of this feedback. Joey J says, do you like the direction WordPress is going? Block editor or full site editor? Maybe a talk for another day. Yep, it's maybe a big talk for another day. I'm okay with the direction they're going for full site editing. And what I'm not okay about is they aren't really listening to the feedback that customers are giving them and to other developers are giving them. It seems very much there's a few set amount of people that want this to happen, and they're making it happen regardless whether or not it may be a good idea or not. Paul says, nah, everything will break on new releases until they have a roadmap. Absolutely. That's just the nature of things, you know. I mean, you could spend ages sitting there doing roadmaps and working it out to make sure that people's sites don't break, or you could just, you know, roll it out. For the majority of people it works, and for some people it doesn't. Or you could roll out an update and it breaks everything, you go, oops, and make a security fix for it, which seems to kind of be, those last two seem to be the road that's WordPress is going down at the moment. So, well, thank you very much, guys. That was great to have your feedback on that. It's good to see that people are on board for that and kind of embracing this idea of full site editing for that. I was going to see if you've got any other topics, but really I've queued up pretty much the rest of the topics for the year, you can have a look on the meetup.com. App for that, and I've got all those meetups all the way up to the last one in December scheduled. So just a few quick shout outs. One is for WPAustralia.org. So if you guys are new here and you haven't been to a quickie before, there's the WPAustralia.org website. Excuse me, and it shows you all the meetups that are happening, whether they're online or whether they're in person. So you can click on that button, find a meetup, and you can also click on that button and it shows you how to join our Slack group, which is wpaustralia.slack.com. We all kind of hang out there. Happy to ask questions, answer questions, and just generally get to know people, especially during these lockdowns. It's pretty important, especially if you're a freelancer working on your own, just to have other people you can kind of chat to, get some steam off, and just, kind of bounce some ideas around for that. I'll leave that on screen. You can look at that later. And yeah, happy to connect with you guys. I'm mostly on LinkedIn at the moment and on Instagram a little bit as well. So there's my handles there. So happy to connect with you. Leave me a message if you are going to connect. So here's the big WordPress meeting. So this is the evening meeting. So the next one is August the 30th. And I'm going to be talking about the WordPress editing with blocks. So kind of like what I've been talking about at the moment, but kind of more broad. So we're going to be looking at the Gutenberg editor as a whole and looking at some of the key blocks as to how you edit now, what you can do with the current editor. So we're looking at that. And next week here in the WP Quickies, I'm going to be looking at the WordPress full site editor template editor. So this is something new that was bundled in 5.8. It's not switched on by default, so I'll show you how to switch that on, how to play around with that next week. Other than that, thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you very much for the questions as well. And take care, keep safe, and I will see you next week talking about the template editor. Ciao.